Amen.
Do your part. Elder Casey talked about me being in the valley, but it wasn't just me, my wife and I. 7 years ago, we found ourselves going through not one, not two, not three, but 4 foreclosures of business deals apparently gone bad. Actually, they did go, not apparently, they did go bad. They went really bad, really bad. And literally, for me, it was like my world was coming to an end. This is beyond what I ever imagined could happen to me. This is, I came out of college, college degree. I felt like I had everything under control. But a decision that I made one time took me under. And literally found myself in $350,000 in debt plus, over. Now, how do you go from there? How do you have that desire to want to keep living, to keep going, to keep saying, I want to still do this? How do you do that? I couldn't fathom, my wife and I couldn't fathom. But we said, we need to come together and devise a plan to serve the Lord and trust in Him in His ordeal, in His trial, facing His obstacles. And that's just what we did. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy today. But God spoke to me back then. And it still resonates with that theme about being obedient. And my obedience and my form of submission actually came, and as we all share our life verses, for me, Grace, you touched on it when you spoke. Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. And all things, not some, all things shall be added unto you. But there is a command, seek first the kingdom of God. In everything you do, in everything that I do. Now let me put out a disclaimer, so you don't feel like I'm some righteous, perfect human being. No, I'm not. I'm a sinner. And as the verse, I am unworthy, but it's just by God's grace that I'm here to share this with you. But when we talk about positioning, the most important position you can give yourself, actually position yourself, is by seeking God's kingdom first. In your daily lives, at your jobs, in your interaction with other people, how are you seeking God? And I had to come in terms with that verse. And yet, Rachel's like, God, I'm going to make a deal with you. We always have to make a deal with God, right? You say your word, never returns void. So you're telling me if I seek your kingdom first, you shall add all things to me. God said, seek my kingdom first, and I shall add everything to you. I shall add all things. Now, it's not even about the financial, it's just more so getting myself back together. Getting myself back to being whole. Because I was broken back in 2007. I was broken. My wife and I were broken. But God said, trust me in this. Trust me in this. Obey and seek my kingdom first. And that's just what we've been doing ever since. And from a business that literally was started with the last $200 in my pocket. Nobody will hire me at a time. All the foreclosures of my credit, jobs will say, well, that's a red flag. Other jobs will say, most of us heard, you are overqualified. means I have more to give to you, but you're overqualified. And so I resolved to the last thing that I knew how to do. And I always make a joke, and I always tell people, it's like thank God for my grandmother back in Africa. I grew up in Cameroon, West Africa. And every Saturday, I love playing soccer. I love soccer. That's my favorite sport. Before I left the house, I had to clean that house. I had to clean that house, and she would actually inspect it and make sure it was clean. Now, we're not talking about vacuuming, and we're talking about getting on your knees. Scrub. And until this day, my clients wonder why we don't use, mops. My team, we all get down on our knees and we wipe that floor. So before I left the house, I had to clean that house before I went to go play. And it was just that innate adaptive skill in me of house cleaning that I say, what else can go wrong? I find myself sleeping in my car, nowhere to stay. She was at her parents' house. I couldn't go back home. I had moved home. I was a grown-up. So I wasn't necessarily, the African community. You're not necessarily invited back home once you declare yourself a man.
Right.
I could have went home, but that wasn't my path. With the last $200 in my pocket, I took that, told Erica, my wife, sweetheart, I'm going to start cleaning houses. She thought I was joking at first, until we got in the car, went to, was it BJ's? BJ's. Her parents had a BJ's car. That's where I could get it. Bought the supplies for cheap. Bought a vacuum cleaner. Bought cleaning supplies. And I don't even know how I made business cards. I just made some cards with a name, New Vision, and that just stuck. And for an entire year, I'm like, Lord, I'm seeking you. But for an entire year, I only had one client. I'm doing everything possible, everything I can do to get business. Now, that one client was literally $150 a month. And what we were putting out was almost $3,000 a month. She had lost a job at the time. When that wasn't adding up, I had to sell water on the street. Most people don't know this. I went to Sam's Club, bought 3 cases of 35 bottles of water, so that's like 100 and, do the math, 105. Sell those on the side of the street just to survive. But God said, do not ignore the cleaning business. I stayed faithful with that one client, continued to serve them. Served them for a year and a half. But in the midst of that, God also spoke to me through a homeless gentleman. And that's where I found my purpose. There's something very vital about finding your purpose in life and living out your purpose. See, cleaning was just, and it's still more of a job to me right now. But finding my purpose through this homeless man, now God has positioned Erica and I to live out full-time serving people in the homeless community. And even when things were tough, even when things were hard, we didn't have much, God says, seek first my kingdom, and all things shall be added unto you. How do you serve those who have nothing when you have nothing? God said you have something. You have your words. You have your story. You have something. What do you have that you can give to these men and women? Christmas Eve 2011? 2009. See, I got the dates mixed. 2009, that was our first outing. Erica and I and a dear friend of mine, Keith Marshall, went out to Baltimore City on Central Avenue with just a few blankets and coats, and just gave that out to some homeless brothers and sisters that we met that night. And that was the birth of our non-profit organization called Friends of the Homeless. Today, a Friends of the Homeless is serving over 200 men and women every second Saturday of each month. Yeah. Something that started with a small seed that Eric and I planted with just three people. Today we have over 30 volunteers coming out each Saturday serving with us. Amen. But the most important part is to see how lives of both people who are serving and the recipients, how the lives are transforming. But all this would not have happened if we did not obey. Yes. This December, Eric and I had an opportunity to travel back to my home country in Cameroon because we partnered with an orphanage of 40 children. And we went there and God just did something mysterious in us. Actually just revealed to us that there is more work to be done. There is more work to be done for your kingdom, for the kingdom of God. And sometimes God will give us that vision, will give us that mission, and we might get scared. But my prayer to you and my word to you is simply do your part. Do your part. God has everything else taken care of. God has the people. God has the resources. God has the tools to help you on that journey that He is calling you towards. And I will close with this verse that I share amongst people about being faithful to God, being faithful back to God in whatever you do. Malachi 3:10, and I'll have Erica read it for us if you don't mind. Yeah. And she will share something too.